Hello, Mr. Brian Mulroney. We're very glad to have you here today.
I'm very glad to be here today to talk about NAFTA, which is an acronym for the North American Free Trade Agreement. The North American Free Trade Agreement is an agreement which allows the countries Canada, the United States of America, and Mexico to trade among themselves without a tariff or tax, and allows these countries to trade their specialized industries, for example, agriculture, textiles, and automobiles, to be traded with zero tariff.
Hello, Mr. Mulroney. Tim Johnson from the Toronto Star. How was NAFTA started?
That's a very good question. NAFTA started by the following three countries of Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. And it was started by President George W. Bush, Mexican President Salinas, and myself, Brian Mulroney, this year of 1992, and formal consent will be granted next year of 1993.
Mr. Mulroney, George Waddell from Associated Press. Which groups of people oppose NAFTA and which supported NAFTA?
Many more people support NAFTA than those who oppose it. However, the groups that oppose NAFTA are the labor unions especially, because of the fear of job loss and wage loss. However, with that being said, there are many more people that support the North American Free Trade Agreement, and there's an argument that it would lead to economic stimulation and it would lead to globalization. So in the long term, the North American Free Trade Agreement would be better for everybody.
Mr. Mulroney, Julian Facchio from the Globe and Mail. What are the possible limitations of NAFTA?
That's a very good question. The possible limitations of NAFTA are for goods being produced by the departments and agencies, including some commissions and boards, $25,200 tariff. For services being procured by departments and agencies, $80,400. And for construction services being procured by departments and agencies, $10,400,000. Now, the following statistics that I gave you are all in Canadian currency and are all Canadian policies.
Hello, Mr. Mulroney. Max Thompson from the Huffington Post. What are the possible negative impacts of NAFTA?
The possible negative impacts of NAFTA are, as I stated before, Canadian jobs being lost. However, with that being said, it works equally around the table because Mexican jobs are also at a risk of being lost. American jobs are at risk of being lost. So there's kind of this parallel effect where it works around the three different countries that have direct involvement in the North American Free Trade Agreement. Another possible negative impact is, as I stated before, wages being surpassed. However, it'll affect all around the table in regards to Canada, Mexico, and the United States of America in regards to wages being surpassed. And then another big impact is Mexicans fleeing to the U.S. And the problem with that is because jobs in the U.S. Tend to be tend to exist more than they do in Mexico, and that's because the U.S. brought a large amount of subsidies to farmers who resided in the United States.
Hello, Mr. Mulroney. Jaden Washington from the Global News. What are some possible positive impacts of NAFTA?
Some positive impacts of NAFTA allow Canadians to purchase goods made in the U.S. without a tariff. However, on the flip side of things, it also allows Americans and Mexicans to purchase goods made in Canada without a tariff. Now, the problem with that is that when Mexicans and Americans purchase goods made in Canada, we wouldn't receive a tariff. So, which kind of sucks for the account. Which kind of sucks. However, with that being said, whenever Canadians purchase goods from the United States of America or Mexico, we don't have to pay a tariff. It also gives our country a status. And it gives us a status as being the world's most favored nation. And what this means is when our country has low trade tariffs or pretty much no trade tariffs, which is the case in the North American Free Trade Agreement. It also facilitated cross-border movement of goods and services. It brought towards the promotion of fair trade, and it greatly increased investment opportunities. And what this means is that people in Mexico might invest in Canada, or people in the U.S. might invest in Canada, which leads to greater economic impact, which affects our country well. And before, investments kind of occurred between between those countries. But now, due to the North American Free Trade Agreement, investments are more prominent before the different countries. Before you would primarily invest in your own country. Now it's cross-border investments. It also provides protection as well as enforcement on IP or intellectual property, and this just isn't just based on inventions. It's also based on software patents as well, and it also forms procedures of the resolution of trade disputes. So if someone doesn't fill their end of the bargain, if someone does not fill their end of the bargain in regards to trade, it won't just be unnoticed. So for example, if me myself were to purchase $10 million worth of wheat from the U.S. For my grocery store chain, or like let's say I own Sobeys and I need $10 million of wheat, and I didn't receive the wheat, then it would be much easier for me to recover my money, or at least recover the wheat by bringing it to the NAFTA board of directors.
This one's from Jake Totino from CBC Radio. Do you think NAFTA is good for Canada?
Yes and no. I think the problem is when Americans and Mexicans purchase products from Canada, Canada doesn't receive any tax, as I stated before. However, with that being said, it also allows countries to specialize in one thing and to be great in that one thing.
And this last question is from David Lee from the Quebec Daily. Why do you think this was a significant event?
I think NAFTA was very significant for Canada, and the reason being is that it led to globalization, and it led to, as I stated before, specialization. And based on land features and limitations, it only makes sense that one country focuses on one thing and is great at that one particular thing. Now, with specialization, for example, in China, specialization in China would be mass producing things using their resources. And in Canada, specialization might be wheat, or in Mexico it might be I don't know, like maybe tacos. It's just one country focusing on one thing. And for example, if I were to mass produce a pen, I would mass produce it in China because of the resources, as I said before, that they have of mass producing things, which is much greater than the North American counterparts. Thank you very much for listening to my speech. Brian Mulroney out.